Hello, I'm Ilene Wood, and this is today's episode of Bag Lunch. We're going to continue on with new acquisitions. Today, we're going to look at a group of evening bags, or small bags that make big statements. This is a bag from the 1950s, and the company's name is Greta. And the reason I personally love this bag, number one, it's in gray mink. Number two, it has silver hardware and this beautiful sort of incised handle. And silver was not that frequently used in hardware back in that day, so that makes this bag a bit more special. This is an iconic bag by the designer Wendy Stevens. She does bags out of industrial metal and makes them look very graceful. And this is her fan bag. And if you hold it up to the light, in fact, you can see right through it. But it looks very soft and fragile, but it's really made out of metal. Now, speaking of high and low, as I have in other episodes, this is the poor man's version of Wendy Stevens. This is a bag I found in a junk store in New York for $10. And while it's obviously not as beautifully executed as the bag from Wendy, this bag still packs a lot of punch and is a great look for the amount of money spent. And I dare say if I carried this into a party, I don't think people would think it was a $10 bag off the street. Here is another little silver bag. This one is in sterling silver. And this is a bag that comes from Istanbul, Turkey. And it's a bag that was purchased in their marketplace. And these bags of this type were sold at the time that I visited Istanbul many years ago. And these bags came in all different shapes and sizes. But this one is particularly lovely. And once again, like the Greta bag, it has a beautiful handle. This is a bag by Debbie Brooks. And she was a designer that did paintings and images that she would affix to the front of handbags. And I love this one because it's a woman with an overloaded closet, and it reminds me of my own. This is a beautiful bag done in Brazil by a company called Sobral, and they're best known for their jewelry, but they also, for a short time, did some handbag designs. And I have a couple more of these bags, but they are at the museum. They're over at the camera right now. This is a very amusing bag from Betsey Johnson, and it looks like a little tiger stripe rug, but this one is done on velvet with beading. This bag is a rarity. It's from Anna Sui. She is a contemporary designer, and she doesn't make that many handbags. I think most of the bags that she makes are sold in Japan, so I was fortunate to come by this one. This is another very fun bag. This is by Betsey Johnson, and it's a modern day take on a bag from the late 60s that was called the Dallas telephone bag. It was done by a company called Dallas Handbags, and I have a few of them in my collection. They actually have a real handbag receiver as the handle, and the bag has a cord where if you plugged it into a wall socket for a phone, which probably don't exist much anymore, but if you did plug it into a wall socket, the phone is actually usable. This one, by contrast, is not, but it's just a very small and amusing take on that iconic telephone bag. This one was located through a collector in England that I'm aware of, and occasionally she will sell bags from her collection. I've been fortunate enough to buy a few of them. And this one is quite lovely in that it has a greyhound on the front. This bag probably dates to the 20s. This is another bag that is vintage, and it was probably a child's bag. Here's another bag that dates back to the 20s into the 30s, and it's really quite beautiful in that it has these Bakelite elements upon it, and it's a very unusual shape. And on the back is a little strap by which you can carry it. So a woman would put her hand through and carry the bag. Here's another vintage bag, once again from the 20s into the 30s, this one being made of lizard. And unfortunately, the dyes were not really stable, so this was probably a very vibrant burgundy bag when new, much like the lining color. But the bag has lost some color. Here's the way it's carried with the strap on the back. And this final bag is not really a bag at all. It's probably one of the older ones in my collection, and it's actually a candy box. And it is done in a snakeskin print that also has a bit of texture to it. And it shows very early screening. I don't want to take the chance to open it up because it's very fragile, but it was truly sold with candy inside, but it was mimicked after a typical handbag. So this, I believe, probably dates to the 1910s. So once again, thank you very much for joining us for today's episode of Bag Lunch.